Welcome to the Crimson Engine. My name is 𝙏𝙃𝙄𝙎. Today I am looking at the top 5 things that I saw at NAB 2022, the technologies shaping filmmaking in the year and decades to come. So I did a video a couple of weeks ago about what I was expecting to see at NAB, so we're going to compare that with what I actually saw at NAB, starting with the digital soundstage, the computer-controlled LED camera-synced way to shoot films, where instead of a green screen where you composite in your imagery later, you actually shooting in camera the visual effects that are being displayed on a LED array behind your talent. This was used extensively in things like The Mandalorian and new Batman film. And there were quite a few different companies showing off their digital backlot technology, first among them being 𝙏𝙃𝙄𝙎, which had a huge 180 degrees, very impressive setup, to the 𝙏𝙃 technology stand, to 𝙏𝙃𝙄𝙀, which was one of the sponsors of NAB. They had a cool, almost like a ride that you could do where you jumped on a bike, and they had the 𝙏𝙃 camera robot that moved around and sort of animated the display behind you, right down to some smaller little companies using the same technology, albeit at a more achievable level. My real question was, can independent filmmakers use this, whether they're renting the sound stages or building it themselves? And if not, how far away is the technology to someone like me to spend a few $1,000s and shoot a whole bunch of scenes in a day, cheaper than I can do it with green screen? On my previous feature film, Devil's Fortune, we shot green screen for the car scenes, and it was a lot of work for me to then composite those shots in. I would much rather have done it in camera on the day. The answer, as far as I could tell from talking to people in these booths, is that it is still quite a ways away for independent filmmakers. You're still looking at $10,000 a day for these setups, for the ones that look good enough to put in a film. There are some ones that you can do for live presentation, like weather kind of people, that sort of green screen usage, but for narrative use where it's actually meant to look like the person is actually there, yeah, it's $10,000 a day and up. And the reason is, it's not one system, it's actually 3 systems. It's the screen, which to be bright enough to illuminate the subject have to be very big, very power intensive. They need cooling, they need big rack mounted computers to run them. Then you have the camera that has to be synced to the screen, and its position and its lens and its zoom all have to be programmed in real time. And there's a couple different systems for doing it. There's inside out, where the camera communicates to the system, and there's outside in, where there's an array of cameras all over the screen that then tracking markers on the camera and work that out. But I actually watched a lot of people in their booths trying to get their own systems working in order to show them off. And it is a very finicky business. It's still a very new technology. And if someone moves a little bit further than they're supposed to, or the camera gets out of alignment, then it throws the whole alignment off, and then it has to be reset and recalibrated. It's a little bit like 3D printers were 5-6 years ago, where if you're off by 1/4 of a degree, then the whole thing is messed up. And the last big system is the 3D environment that you're asking the camera to display onto the screen. And that has to be synced up and worked on as well. And the reason that the systems are so expensive is essentially you need at least one technician for each of those systems on set at all times. So you need someone to look after the screen, someone to keep the camera in sync, and someone to be doing the 3D environments. Without any hardware, you're already at $3,000 or $4,000 a day. I'm excited for someone to come along and solve these technological problems easily and make it so that it's sort of a plug-and-play system where you just buy a generic cityscape or a forest or whatever, and then just show up, do a little bit of color grading on the environment with your lights, and then shoot your scene. But as it stands, it really is certainly no cheaper than green screen. In fact, it's a lot more expensive than green screen right now. And the main advantage that it has for the big studios that use it is that you can get everyone involved in the production to sign off on the frame, on the look, at one time. The next big technology I saw that I think is really taking off is camera to cloud, meaning you shoot something with a 𝙏𝙃𝙄𝙎 or a Atomos system, and as you're shooting, it's being beamed to a cloud account. It basically allows you to have a copy of your footage, albeit in H.264, in the cloud as you're shooting it. So the hard drive gets lost, the camera gets damaged, all of that footage is already backed up in the cloud, meaning that your whole life isn't dependent on you getting your memory card home and into the computer and backed up once you've shot a big scene. It's backed up as you're shooting it, which I think is, revolutionary. The other advantage is that your editor can start cutting together the scenes from one day's shoot, and you can look at it that night or the next morning when you're going to set, and you still have a chance to reshoot. You still have a chance to get shots before you leave that location, which can be critical. There's so many times I would have just died to have an insert shot or one more line to connect those two things. And if you have an editor on your show or your film, and he's working or she's working as you're shooting, it can be an absolute game changer. I think that is a super powerful technology. The way most people are using it right now is to, client sign off or whoever else are the other stakeholders of the production to be able to see what's being shot as it's being shot, that without having to come to set because of, COVID protocols. You want to keep the set as lean as possible, but camera to cloud means that everyone else can be buying in as you're going. It is one more thing you have to put on the camera. It is one more thing, but it works pretty well. The C70R5C can use it. The C300 and C500 are getting upgrades at the end of this month that it will allow you to basically not worry about recording on a separate system, but it will just take the record prompt from the camera along with a timecode and the clip name and send that to the cloud so that you're no longer having to sync things up. You're not getting version control issues. You don't have to press record on both the camera and the 𝙏𝙃𝙄𝙎 at the same time. That is all going through. It's not that expensive. The 𝙏𝙃𝙄𝙎 Cube655, which is the one I'm going to review, is $2,000. It is not $20,000, and the frame IO count is $30. So it is something that independent filmmakers, corporate, industrial, documentary people will have access to, for less than the cost of the camera. Cloud drives were another big technology that Blackmagic, for one, was showing off, and I saw a couple of other examples of how these work. Is essentially you have a hard drive array that you just work off editing your film or editing your project, but it connects to the internet separately than your computer, and in its downtime, it syncs all the footage that's held on that drive with the cloud, and then someone else can have a mirror image of that same drive array somewhere else, so that you can just use the cloud not only to back up, but to keep two hard drives identical, and then share the project files across the cloud as well, which is what DaVinci Resolve 18 allows you to do even more fluidly than previous, so that two people, there can be an editor and a color grader working on the same project, or there can be two editors working on different parts of the different scenes of the same thing, and all of the changes are going to happen in real time with the same footage to the same project, which again, in the post-COVID remote working environment is really great. Blackmagic have repurposed the old enclosure of their GPU accelerator to be their cloud drives, which is great, less waste. It's a nice design, but the big ones are pretty expensive. I think 20 terabyte cloud drive is $10,000. It goes upwards from there. But they do have this interesting little device that's only a couple $100 called the Cloud Pod. It has a gigabit Ethernet port, and it has two USB-C ports, so you plug it into the internet and plug it into your own hard drives, and then it acts as a cloud drive for your existing storage. I really respect that Blackmagic is making this technology available. I think it works with Dropbox, but it's $5 a month or something on top of your existing Dropbox to make this accessible to pretty much anyone. I also saw some cool video transmission technologies that use internet rather than a transmitter and receiver modules. So you just have a transmitter, which is very small. It is made by Axoon, and then is picked up by an iPhone or an iPad over wireless without the need to have a dedicated receiver. So you can use all those big, beautiful Apple iPad displays as your director's monitor or your client monitor or your focus pullers monitor. There is a little bit of a delay, like 0.6 of a second, so it may not work for all of your focus pulling, but for most of the uses, I think it's going to be really great. I'm going to try and get my hands on them and see exactly what the constraints are as far as focus goes. But apart from the general technology, it was great to be back at NAB. Thank you to everyone who came up and said hi. I really like meeting people who watch videos on this channel and hear everyone's stories of, how their career has changed and progressed over the last couple of years. I think there were 55,000 people in attendance at NAB, which is pretty wild. For a long time, it wasn't going to happen. For the last 2 years, it's been canceled, and it really felt good to be back doing normal things, even though we're really living in a different world. That is my wrap up of NAB. Thank you to B&H for sponsoring this video. You can see links in the description to all of the stuff that I'm talking about. I will see you next time.